Hello, everyone. It's Friday, May 24th, 2024, which means it must be the day for the DMZ America podcast. I'm Ted Rall, coming to you from the left,
And I'm Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
and we're both editorial cartoonists, which is a job that used to mean that people drew funny pictures of the President of the United States, and then they ran in something called newspapers. And then
Ted, what is this newspaper you speak of?
Well, it was they were pieces of paper that were printed en masse on low quality stock and then distributed widely by small boys who were occasionally killed by serial killers. And
And that's not a sustainable model?
And part of the profits from the serial killings went to editorial cartooning. So sadly, unfortunately, due to the decline in serial killing, there has been editorial cartooning is in grave crisis.
You know, I was listening to a couple of our podcasts recently. It's weird what pops up on my phone because it's like these files end up in my music playlist. And so I'll listen to two or three, and the stuff you and I laugh at people would be aghast because, I mean, like this, I'm just giggling at a serial killer who kills little boys. And you and I are like, what?
Having once been little boys. Yes. No, well, because humor is often dangerous. I mean, I've always thought it was like really remarkable whenever a comedian, when you could have like these sort of self-stylized, like say, G-rated or like Christian comedians.
Yeah, clean.
And if clean comedians, and if they can be funny, that's incredibly impressive because that is hard as shit. It's like, to me, danger and edginess is humor helper. It spices it up. And if you don't have that spice, man, it's spam. It's boring. It's spam the food, not spam the email.
Oh, real quick, I do a caption contest for the Dallas Morning News. And I did one of the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones, who has had copious amounts of plastic surgery and looks freakish. And I have him on the shoulders of the head coach, who's an obese man. So I drew Jerry Jones as a freak, and I drew the coach as a fat man. I got more than one letter complaint saying, how dare you fat shame a football coach, and how dare I make fun of Jerry Jones' plastic surgery. I mean, and they were serious. It wasn't like some weird, ha ha off. It was like, dude, that's what we do. We make fun of serious situations, hopefully in a way that provides some context and some comment.
Yeah, no, and it's ideal if you can find humor even in very dark stuff like the Gaza conflict. And I think sometimes we do. Let's talk about, speaking of which, this morning, this is going to be kind of a news dump day here in the United States because today's Friday before Memorial Day weekend. So look tonight for anything that check the news tonight and tomorrow morning because the odds are there will be some interesting stuff in there. One of the big ones was the International Court of Justice in The Hague, responding in just under a week to the Republic of South Africa's request that Israel be ordered to stand down in Rafah. The court voted. They have representatives from various ICC member nations from around the world. They voted 11-2. The two negative no votes were from Israel itself. No surprise there. And Uganda. I don't know if Uganda somehow, when the Israelis raided Entebbe, they got to keep Uganda afterwards. I don't know how that works, but
that is interesting.
I don't know why what that tie is. But in any event, maybe they already had close ties. Maybe that's why the raid at Entebbe, maybe that's why the Ugandans let the Israelis in. I was always under the impression that it was kind of an invasion.
It was. I think it's more current than that, Ted, because Entebbe happened in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
I think Uganda tends to break out in, how shall we put this, ethnic cleansing and things of that. And that may be why they're going, hell, well, we cannot see what is wrong with this. Would be my guess.
Yeah, maybe they're like, this is exactly the kind of thing we would like to do in the future. It would set a terrible precedent if the ICJ would
Exactly.
Israel to stop.
Exactly.
So so basically the order comes down to three things: stop all military action in Rafah, open the border completely to you can still have border controls, but allow humanitarian aid and free passage across the border to Egypt, and allow UN investigators into the Gaza Strip to check out the humanitarian situation. And basically, we want to come in, we want to look at it, we want to make sure that humanitarian concerns are being properly provided for as per our previous order, which you say you were following, but you weren't, and things, if anything, have gotten even worse since the last time we issued you that order. This morning I was listening to the BBC when this news broke, and they immediately had brought on the Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom, who came on and said he had his talking point, which obviously was carefully rehearsed, was that Israel takes international law very seriously. That said, nothing will stop Israel from going after Hamas or trying to get back their hostages. And so the BBC presenter, being BBC and not American, insisted on a straight answer. So does that mean that Israel will ignore it? And he just kept repeating the same thing.
Right.
He's like, we believe we're in compliance with international law. And the BBC guy said, well, to put a finer point on it, if you disobey the ICJ order, then you are not in compliance with international law. And the thing is, people are saying, well, the ICJ doesn't have an enforcement mechanism. Not directly, but they definitely have an indirect enforcement mechanism. They are very respected, more than most international bodies around the world. And member states, many of them will impose sanctions against Israel as a result. They will freeze assets. They will shut off any kind of military assistance. Certainly, some of them will probably cut off all economic ties. Some of them will recall their ambassadors. I mean, there will be consequences. Israel absolutely is becoming rapidly isolated. And I think their only way out of this would be to comply with the order, which they're not going to do. So,
no.
So basically here we are. Scott, you've been supportive of Israel. You've been supportive
Yes.
of their their war against Hamas in Gaza, but I think it's fair to say that you've also you're not into the way that you feel that they've gone too far when it comes to killing civilians.
I don't know about killing civilians. I think that that's the Hamas playbook, to hide behind civilians, and that, frankly, the way war has been waged ever since World War II. I mean, civilians are in the way now. That's just how war is going to be waged now. I think it has gone too far. And I think that, first off, going to what the ICJ has asked for, Israel is going to go no, and oh yeah, no.
I could see them I could see them agreeing to the last two terms. I could see them agreeing to the investigators, because it's like,
no.
Well, you want to come in and get killed? Oh well. And then but I could really see them agreeing to opening that border, because you and I disagree on that. But I could see them like, oh, the Israelis be like, oh, you'd like us to open the border with Egypt? Oh, yes, we can do that.
Yes. No.
And then they can open both borders.
Clearly,
both ways.
Clearly part of the strategy. Listen, here's the thing that is changing my mind, or at least giving me great pause, Ted, is the fact that the Netanyahu government has not told us what their intentions are, other than killing a crap ton of Palestinians. Now, Hamas is hiding amongst them. Hamas continues to lob missiles even from Rafah. You have today the news that 3 hostages were I'm not sure how you put this, Ted. Liberated, not quite. All 3 were dead.
Although we don't know how they died. I mean,
well,
they could have been killed by Hamas. They could have been killed by the Israelis. We don't know.
Right. But now I love how the left, or at least supporters of Palestinians, which I think is friggin' hilarious in the context of, anyway. is that, well, this is Israel's fault. I go, no, here's the thing, folks. If these people had not been taken hostage in the first place, all three
No, that's
very
true.
likely would be alive
No, that's true.
today.
I mean, look, if you look, here's the thing. In the same way that we will speak slowly and use small words, it's like in the same way that like if you're a country and you throw a prisoner into prison and something bad happens to that prisoner, that's on you. And similarly, if you kidnap someone and take them hostage and something bad happens to them for any reason whatsoever, that's on you.
So you've talked about in the past that this is a land grab by Israel. You and I disagree on this. I thought it was a military action. Um, I don't think either one of us is right, because the Netanyahu government, and Netanyahu in particular, cannot and will not say what the end game here is. I have to believe that it really was just blind fury, and supported by the populace who, many of whom still can't go home, many of whom were, it's a small country. Israel is a small country, and everybody in that country, I would say a vast majority, knew somebody or knew a family who was affected by the October 7th attacks. It was a blind fury, very similar to the United States attacking Afghanistan. We're going to hit something. And the level of violence afforded Western countries who have enormous amounts of arms leads to what we're witnessing now. With Rafah being the last outpost, how big is Rafah? It's not a big, it's not big.
It is. It's not a big place. I've been there. The pre-war. I'd have to look up the pre-war population, but if I had to if I had to guess, I'd say you probably think it's probably in the 200,000 range. But about 1.4 million people from northern and central Gaza had been forced down there. Not really fair to say that they had taken refuge there. They'd been forced down by the Israelis who ordered them to go there. And then about 600,000 of those are now living basically like along the waterline because there's no place to go back to. So basically 800,000 or so people remain in Rafah. So the population is really swollen. These are people they're not living inside. They're living in the street. They're living in tent cities outside of the city. They're living along the border wall with Egypt.
And so we're at the stage now where, and Ted, you were way ahead of everybody in this country, especially the commentator class, let's call us that, when America invaded Afghanistan. And when they got, then they kicked ass on the Taliban and they took over the country quickly. When they got close to being done and mopping up, and the Bush administration still couldn't tell us what's next. Netanyahu still can't tell us what's next. Now, I have a very practical, first of all, war is stupid. War is always stupid. Always. So I'm certainly not a warmonger by any stretch of anyone's imagination. I think, like I said, war is a waste of time, money, and blood and treasure. Always is, because you always end up doing what you should have been doing from the beginning, which is talking to each other.
No doubt.
So, there are rare instances when that's not true. Anyway, in this instance, now I'm looking at Israel going, okay, you just had your hissy fit, which is really, I hate to put it that way because it diminishes the toll it took and what caused it, what exacerbated it. I'm looking at this now as going, what the fuck are you doing? I mean, truly, you could now do the Ted Rall policing of Hamas. They are cordoned off into a very small area.
Well, kind of. I mean,
what do you mean?
They've, according to the intelligence community and the Mossad, Hamas is bigger and better than ever back in northern Gaza. So apparently,
northern Gaza also, Gaza.
Apparently, the Israelis haven't really. The IDF aerial bombardment campaign has not been effective. It has killed a lot of civilians, but basically Hamas is, down in the tunnels, and they are still there, and they still pop up like, like a meerkat, and shoot and shoot at the Israelis and
Sort of
pop
a
back down. So,
sort of whack-a-mole. Yeah.
yeah, it's literally whack-a-mole, except they're not being whacked. And I would say, reading between the lines, probably a lot of non-Hamas Palestinians are now joining Hamas because they're so angered at what the Israelis are doing. So, I mean, that's the thing. This is not a, everybody who's studied counterterrorism would say this is the exact opposite of what you should do in a counterterrorism operation. You don't do anything close to what the Israelis are doing. And to put a really fine point on it, Scott, Israel has now been at war for 7 months. They have lost fewer than 300 IDF soldiers. 300. I mean, that number of guys would have died in car accidents. I mean, it's like basically they haven't lost anyone. And that tells me that they're not conducting anything close to a precision operation. They're not, which you can only do with troops on the ground. And even then, things are sloppy with automatic weapons. But they're bombing from the air. They're completely reliant on air power here. I do want to take issue with sort of the general, frankly, your broad point, which is you're saying that basically both in the post October 7th and post 9/11 environments, the US and Israel each basically lashed out in an emotional way following. And I think that's how those wars were sold to their respective publics, for sure. Like to the Israeli, let's lash out. To the American people, let's get them. We're going to get them in their caves, for sure. But I don't believe for one second that that either the Bush administration or the Netanyahu war cabinet did not they didn't have an agenda, they didn't have a plan, and they didn't know what it was. I think they had a plan because, especially in the case of Israel, they were able to go to war within literally 48 hours. I mean, they had to have plans ready to go in order to be able to do that. I mean, to put this in perspective, it took them 10 hours to respond to October 7th and show up. Remember, they didn't come. They didn't go there. They were like, for like 9.5 hours. The kibbutzim that were being attacked were calling the IDF. The IDF didn't come in a country that takes 3 hours to drive from one end to the other the long way. So I mean, so in that sense, they turned on a dime in order to attack. They obviously had all the war plans ready to go, which you would expect them to do. And I think in terms of the agenda, they were I think that the reason that neither the Bush administration nor Netanyahu wanted us to know what their war aims are is because the public would not approve of those war aims.
I don't know that Afghanistan was a war aim, only because we didn't gain that much. Now, Iraq, I mean, we tried out a lot of weapon systems that we ended up using in Iraq. I mean, bear in mind, the US had not been in a full-fledged war since 1991, since the Gulf War. So for 10 years, there was a lot of new bang-bangs that needed to be tested out. But more importantly, Cheney, coming from the neocon wing of the Republican Party and was clearly driving much of this policy.
True.
Was looking at, and this has been discussed in neocon circles for decades. I can promise you this, because I read numerous articles on preemptive war.
Yeah.
we can go in and
Project
we can
for a New American Century, 1998, all that stuff.
And they went into, especially Iraq, Afghanistan. You may be right that we're going to try this shit out, and then we're going to go to the next thing, which is going to be Iraq.
Afghanistan was a war they knew they could win because it was against an adversary without any air force, for example.
Well, and very few arms, most of them outdated. They were run out. I mean,
they were a ragtag militia.
But they didn't follow. And what's weird is you had Colin Powell as a Secretary of State not following the Powell doctrine, which is knowing why you're going in, overwhelming force, and have an exit strategy. What does victory look like? And moving that to Israel now, what does victory look like? No one I've talked to, in fact,
Sandals, Khan Yunis.
I have had off the record discussions with people who are high ranking in the Israeli Foreign Service. None of them, Ted, can tell me what the end of this looks like, even off the record,
That's
deep
just because
background.
but could it be, I mean, okay,
Oh
so
yeah, they don't know.
is it possible
Nobody
that,
knows.
well, but how about Yoav Gallant and Benjamin Netanyahu? Surely they know.
I don't think, here's the thing. I mentioned the preemptive war
And they
because
obviously covet the land.
well, I think that's part of it, but the preemptive war from the United States going back to Iraq and Afghanistan is they just said, okay, we're just going to blow the shit out of somebody. There's a great line. There's an acting president, and he's John Goodman plays him. He's a Republican speaker who is from the 25th Amendment, gets in the West Wing television show. It's Zoe Bartlett, the president's daughter, has been kidnapped. He says, well, we're going to find her. And if she turns up dead, I'm going to blow up something. God knows what happens next. That to me is the strategy of both the Bush White House and the Netanyahu war cabinet as they go into, as they went, obviously when they went into Afghanistan, particularly when they went to Iraq, and now Israel going into Gaza. I think they went in to blow shit up, and God knows what's going to happen next. Well, they don't know. I don't think they know now.
I think with the I mean, it's with Afghanistan. It's certain. I think that you're very closer to the mark with Afghanistan than with Israel. I mean, with Afghanistan, the war aims kept changing. Right. Initially, it was to capture Osama bin Laden. Hard to do since he was never in Afghanistan. Number two,
that's not true, but okay, go on.
He had left before 9/11. So we went in October 4th of 2001. He was gone. He was gone. We were looking for a guy who was not in Afghanistan. So I can see why our loyal men and women in arms were unable to find him. So then number two was like, okay, we're going to eliminate all the terrorist training camps. Well, that was easy because there were none. They were all closed by that point. So mission accomplished. Then it was like, we're going to overthrow the Taliban. Okay, well, that they sort of did. The Taliban did what Afghans always do when they're invaded by foreign power. They run into the mountains and they hide and they wait. And
Ted, wait, I got to stop you right there. And to be fair, they've only been doing that for 3,000 years.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, go on. Just because
so no one could see it coming.
So we had a right to be surprised that this is what happened.
Totally true. And then, I'm trying to think. Oh, yeah. So then I want to do this in order. And then it was like, oh, we want to install a friendly regime to make sure that it never becomes a hotbed of terrorism ever again. And then after we did install a puppet regime, but it was kind of lame and we didn't really stand them up properly, and we didn't get someone who, Hamid Karzai wasn't popular, so we didn't get someone who, the Afghans actually liked. Then it became like, oh, we have to rebuild, we have to help them rebuild, because we didn't help rebuild really until like we started in like 2005, 2006, but for 4 years, nothing got built. And then it's like, oh, well, now we have to protect the gains that we've made and keep the regime in power. And it's just sort of like at a certain point, it's like, and then literally, you will remember this, Scott, by the last 10 years of the war, it literally became, if we leave, the Taliban will take over, and everyone who died before will have died for nothing. Therefore, we have to stay we have to lose more men and women in order to justify the lives of the men and women we've already lost. And then we withdrew. That's basically
right. And and that comes back to that whole idea of we're going to blow something up and we're going to figure it out and God knows what happens next. And what happened next was we kept backtracking. We kept reconfiguring what the policy was there in Afghanistan, later Iraq. And I think with Netanyahu, that's kind of what this is like the chaos agents, and the idea that there are people in the cabinet who, I'm listening to this, and again, the Palestinians and particularly Hamas have been bad actors in many instances over the years. So for me, I don't have a lot of affection for that side, but
don't forget that Hamas was installed by the Israelis, though. It's an important detail.
Well, it's
I
sort
mean,
of like,
you can say that they were evil bastards, and that's kind of true, but they were installed. This was Netanyahu's idea. It's like, let's finance this radical faction. They'll delegitimize Fatah in the West Bank. We'll divide and conquer, and we'll rule the Palestinians. I mean, that was his idea. We do this all the time. I mean,
whoops.
he
Yeah. Well, look,
his own
we did
Emmanuel
we did
Goldstein.
it. Getting back to Afghanistan. I mean, we gave a lot of money and arms to
Syria. We created ISIS. I mean, over and over and over.
Well, that was just sort of whoops.
Afghanistan was also whoops. Mujahideen become.
But that's the whole thing. That's what I'm saying, and then it makes it sound like I'm apologizing or saying that Israel sort of stumbled into this and just had an emotional outburst and oopsies, we killed thousands of people. They had an emotional outburst without, and I've said this a million times, no one on the planet, no human being makes a good decision when they're angry, especially following a trauma.
That's true.
So
I don't know that Benjamin Netanyahu gives a shit about anyone who died on October 7th at all. I don't think he has an emotional reaction to anything. I
couldn't disagree more on that.
Cold, calculating son of a bitch. I think his heart rate never increased by 1 beat per minute when that happened. I think he was like, huh, okay, all right. Let's like, how can we make this work for my favorite person, me? And he was thinking, like, well, the longer the country has to pull together. If we go to war, keep this going for a while, I stay out of prison for corruption charges. That works.
Okay. Yes. There's that. I think that's part of the equation. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Now you're hearing public utterances from the war cabinet saying this is bullshit. He doesn't have an end game, saying exactly what I've just been saying for the last few minutes. As far as the Palestinians go, I think what he could also hitch his stay out of jail free card to was a decade of dehumanization of the Palestinians. If you hear the comments coming,
try 120 years.
Going
back all the way to the origins of the Zionist movement. A land, what was it? A land without people for people without a land. There were plenty of people there, before Jews started migrating there.
Well, it's sort of like when the Europeans showed up in North America. I always love that. So-and-so discovered Florida.
I love these comparisons,
which was shocking to the Floridians who were living there.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's hilarious when people are like, well, if you're saying that what the Israelis are doing is genocide, then you're saying that America is founded on genocide. Yes. Are you saying that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were genocide? Yes.
Oh, I disagree. No, that's not genocide.
Yes.
No, but I would 100%. Say no to those last two. No, 100%. You and I
think those are widely considered. That's a different genocide.
No, I don't think they are. I think that in your apartment they may be 100% approved.
Clovis, what do you think?
But I can't agree. That's a different podcast. We've kind of dragged this on for a while now, but
well, I do think that, like, look, I think there's no question that I mean, Scott, another way to look at it is, if you were the leader of Israel and come on, you'd be a moron not to want the Gaza Strip as part of your country. You'd look at the map and you're like, it's literally between me and the sea. It's sea access. I mean, geostrategically, you want that. I would want that if I were Netanyahu, even if I'm Ted Rall, left-wing Prime Minister of Israel. I want the Gaza Strip in Israel. In fact, I'd want it so bad. I would be willing to give up the idea of the ethno-state and have it all be one country, to have that in my country. It's valuable. It has oil right offshore. It has a lot going for it. I would want that. It's like a lot. Jared Kushner was right. He said it's worth billions of dollars in as beachfront property. Beautiful place for resorts. He's right.
Well, why would you? Okay, but let me ask you this, Ted. I mean, you floated this before, and I disagree with it only for this reason. Why would you bombard to the Stone Age? I mean, obliterate the infrastructure, I mean, really, from what we're seeing from the aerial reconnaissance, I mean, they've leveled the place. You're
They did.
talking about rebuilding it. If you're actually going to rebuild it, not for Palestinians with a
Yeah,
using what I would call a Marshall Plan type approach to this, but if you're building it to be a luxury, you're talking about a 10 to 15-year process.
at least. But they've
So
got
what?
time. These are people who literally think they're owed that they belong to. They literally think that even though they haven't lived there in significant numbers for 2,000 years, that it's still theirs, right? They take the long view. I mean, it's okay for them, even if they don't
Oh,
get to
yeah.
see it, but their kids and their grandkids get to see it. And in terms of, what made, I mean, I was at first thinking like you, like, well, if you wanted to why would you destroy everything? Why wouldn't you want to keep as much infrastructure as possible so that when you take it, you have less to do? But I think they want the tabula rasa, right? They want the clean slate, so that there's nothing left. Like literally, they can start completely from scratch. There's no messy property lines to deal with. There's no land claims. There's no one who says, this plot of land belongs to me and you can't build your hotel here until you buy me out of the place where my house used to be. I mean, that explains to me why they have the demolition squads going in after the IDF aerial bombardments, and they're carefully, methodically bombing every structure that remains in a place where most structures have been bombed. Like, why are they doing that? What's the point of that? It's expensive and it's actually dangerous. Like demolition is hazardous, right? Probably more IDF troops have gotten killed in accidents from involving demolition than have been shot by Hamas. So it's like, why do they do that? It must be because that's their intent. Like we're starting with a completely clean slate. I mean, it's got to be. And the other thing is, if they intended to let the people return to their homes, they wouldn't have effectively nuked their homes. I mean, it would have been like, now then it's like, well, then, I mean, logically, let's say you and I were the president and prime minister of Israel in the war cabinet together. And we're like, okay, so our plan, let's just say, was we're going after Hamas, and then we're letting everybody go home. Well, neither of us would be like, okay, we're going to destroy every fucking building in Gaza, because then we have to rebuild them all at our expense.
Right.
Why would we do that? We wouldn't do that.
Right. No, that's why I think that what you're suggesting is, I mean, it offers a level of cynicism and, dare I say it, statesmanship, because forward thinking is always statesmanship, in my view.
Really?
That, yes.
Okay, I have to think about that definition.
Oh, I think
I'm not arguing with you.
I think any politician, any public servant who looks
I think Netanyahu is a visionary. I do. I don't like his vision, but he's a visionary.
Oh, he's never shown any
He's showing it right now.
That. I don't think he is. That's why that's why I disagree with you, because I don't think I've seen this from this particular player ever before. So
yeah, he always came off as he is completely a maniac. Did you read the 3-part series in the New York Times called The Unpunished, about basically it was a long, detailed analysis of how Israeli politics moved further and further and further to the right.
No, I bet that's interesting.
It's really much better written than the typical shit that's in the New York Times. So I highly recommend it. I mean, I think it might have been written by someone over 30 years old.
Holy crap.
I know. Hard to believe.
How are they able to breathe on their own?
So, all right. So ICJ, do you think this is, so obviously neither of us thinks that Rafah will come to, but I mean, no. How bad, I mean, obviously Israel's becoming more diplomatically isolated.
Yes.
Norway, Ireland, and was it Sweden?
Spain
have all decided to recognize Palestine. Most of the world now does. 143 nations out of 207 now recognize Palestine as a sovereign state, and have offered embassies there. How much more isolated does Israel get, and when do they start to care?
I think the the war cabinet's coming unraveled. I mean, that's a
That's true.
huge deal. And if they do, then they call elections, which I think then you're going to see Netanyahu, if he's the monster people say he is, and there's a chance he is,
Yes. Yes.
uh, deny having those elections. And then,
Oh,
then
well, can't he just suck up to the far right Orthodox parties?
the numbers, if you look at the polls coming out of Israel now, he is despised by a large majority of Israelis.
Yeah, he's blamed for having allowed October 7th to happen, which,
Not just that, but
by the way,
also
true.
the response, which a lot of Israelis thought, and rightly, that was over the top and hurts Israel. And so, given that, I think Labor or Likud, right? I always
Likud. Likud is the Labor versus Likud. Yeah, he's Likud. Netanyahu is Likud.
Okay, so Labor is going to win huge, and I think you're going to see a vast diminishment. You remember the bullshittery of it became bullshittery. I thought, wow, that's fascinating when they said that. I didn't know at the time because there's a lot of things, because American. I don't know a lot of stuff, but the Israeli, the far right religious parties and their members were exempt from being brought into the. Everybody else had to serve 2 years in the
they're studying the Torah.
Well, they're studying the Torah, and so they were exempt from that service. And the story that went out, and it was widely dispersed, was that so many of them now are giving that up, and they're joining the Israeli army. And every Israeli I have talked to has said now recently that is complete and utter and unstrained bullshit.
Israelis hate
they
that
have
shit.
not. The numbers are minuscule who have come forward and said, you know what, I wanted to protect my country. No, they're still saying, no, I think I'm still going to read the Torah and not get shot at.
Yeah, the Torah is not that dangerous.
It doesn't read itself. Well, they've got that stick with the little finger, the hand of the finger that they read with. And so that you can take an eye out with that, Ted. You may laugh.
True.
My point is that
it could be programmed by Hamas.
There is so much anger towards Netanyahu, but also towards the religious parties for dragging the country this far and make them an international pariah.
But look, the Israeli left is dead. And has
I disagree. Well, you're going to see it revived. You're going to see it resuscitated, and I think it's going to do quite well if and when they have elections there. You're going to see it perform extremely well.
Right.
If they don't go nuts and they actually, Netanyahu won because he put himself forward as a strong man. The left has to do the same thing, but a strong man or woman for the issues that the left cares about.
Well, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yes, well, it's sort of like expecting that here.
Yeah,
it's like.
All right, we shall see. Anyway, good discussion. Always enjoy it. Let's take a little break, and when we come back, we'll get into one of your favorite topics.
I love it.
All right.
Yay!
Hey, welcome back to the DMZ America podcast for May 24th. I'm Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
And I'm editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right with my friend, editorial cartoonist Ted Rall.
So Scott Stantis, for those who do not know, is a vexologist, which sounds like someone who's easily vexed, which might be true.
Well, and I am.
But he's not. But a vexologist is one who studies flags and heraldry, or just flags?
Flags. Just flags.
Okay, just
flags.
But
heraldry, of course, is part of flags. So,
true.
Yeah.
So, not Chief Justice, but Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito Jr. is under fire over flags. It turns out that he flew just after the January 6th insurrection or Capitol riot, or whatever you want to call it. He flew an upside down American flag at his beach house in New Jersey.
No. The upside down flag was at his home outside Washington.
In Virginia, right, in Virginia. And now there's another controversy involving his beach house in Jersey, on the Jersey Shore, where he flew the Appeal to Heaven flag, which also was carried by rioters on January 6th. And the Appeal to Heaven flag has a tree on it, right? It's a pine tree flag. And sort of like a lot of Revolutionary War flags, like the Don't Tread on Me
Right.
These flags have been taken up by far right people, like the Unite the Right rally
Yes.
people in
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Charlottesville.
Some really cool
They didn't really
flags.
used to be, considered right wing weird shit, but they used to be just considered historical. But I would say starting maybe in the 80s, you started to see this stuff pop up on the far right. And so basically, it is being suggested that Alito should recuse himself from the January 6th case against
Yes.
Trump, owing to the flags. So in terms of the upside down flag, he's blaming his wife, saying that there was some sort of dispute with between Martha Ann Alito and a neighbor that caused her to fly the flag upside down. And the appeal to heaven flag, the pine tree flag, he has no explanation for that. But we
How
get
do you
into some,
explain?
it is being interested. I mean, so I guess the argument's being made like, look, you're associated with far right wing politics. The flags prove that. Therefore, you can't be trusted as a Supreme Court justice. That's the argument.
Yes. On those issues, I agree.
Really?
Yeah, I think that it would be like, Ted, here's the thing. I worked for newspapers for almost 40 years. I could not have a bumper sticker, a partisan bumper sticker on my car, period. End of discussion. I was the cartoonist for a fucking newspaper and I couldn't do it. He's a Supreme Court justice.
Now, what
and his
about,
wife. Now, the other thing, two questions that come up real quick.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, two quick questions and you can answer. A, how much do we fucking pay Supreme Court justices who can have palatial homes outside in Tony suburbs of Washington, D.C. and beach homes in New Jersey? Two, if you're going to be a right-wing Supreme Court justice, do you have to have a batshit crazy spouse? Because if you remember, Clarence Thomas's wife is all in on the stop the steal bullshittery, and he has not recused himself, let alone, although maybe she did it because she got a really nice vacation from their friend. By the way, Ted, I love you like a brother, but I will never give you a $500,000 vacation. I'm sorry.
Oh, I will be deeply hurt by that.
Would you accept that? In all seriousness, a side issue. You and I are. I mean, we're really good friends. And if I came to you and said, Ted, I'm going to helicopter you to a private island, and I'm going to fly you there and helicopter you there, and we're going to have this huge, ginormous, crazy sized yacht next to a private island. Would you, what would your thoughts be?
Well, first I'd be suspicious that you might be planning to eat me, like in that movie.
Or hunt you, the most dangerous game.
Yes. And then I would be like, well, I'm easily huntable right here in the States. So I feel like I would put that aside. And as long as there was no conflict of interest and I felt like you could easily afford it, I'd be happy to accept such a vacation. But look, when you have, I think that, even for what you and I do, there's conflicts of interest. Could I accept something like that from, say, a wealthy Republican or Democratic politician? No, because it would impugn my ability to do my job as a pundit. And as it is, I traffic in opinion. I'm not even, pretending to be an unbiased journalist here. But I do if and when I do plain straightforward journalism, I don't want there to be the soupçon of conflict of interest here. So look, I agree with you. It's a major problem. The answer to your question, by the way, is that U.S. Supreme Court justices get about $285,000 a year.
Is that enough to afford a palatial estate in suburban Washington, D.C. and a really appears to be a massive beach house?
He has a wife. We don't know what she does. Maybe she makes some money. Imagine, let's just say for the sake of argument, she makes 70% as much as he does because of the differential, right? So between the two of them, they make $400,000 a year. They don't have a cocaine habit. Sure, they can, I think so, if they're careful. And also the bribes. The bribes, obviously, the gold bullion, we're looking at you, Senator Menendez. So yeah, no, I mean, I do think there's corruption. It is smell, and they have access to insider information too. So that really helps their stock portfolio.
Well, also, yeah, decisions that you and I don't really pay much attention to because they're not as sexy as, say, Roe v. Wade or some other social issue. But if it's one that says a business can or cannot, you can't apply these restrictions to businesses, you could, yeah, you could make a very pretty penny investing on that, knowing.
Yeah. So it's yeah, it's very yeah. So I think it's possible. I guess the thing is here, let's take each flag one at a time. The upside down flag, that's just America, that's just the in distress sign, isn't it?
Right. But those are the flags that were flown after January 6th.
Right. But that's just generically America is just like, like we learned this as little kids, like, oh, I guess it was for ships, right? You turn the flag upside down.
I think it's for anything. I mean, it can be like, we're under distress. We are the Aleutian Islands being under attack by the Japanese, or
okay,
you name it.
All right. So the upside down flag. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of think, and that could really be the dispute with the neighbor, right? I mean, that could have been, that's not, I don't think that's really like, I don't know. Can we say beyond a reasonable doubt that that's really a J6 thing? I don't think we can.
Well, they won't say what the discussion with the neighbor was about. Just that she got into a heated discussion with a neighbor. I was right on the heels. It was the day after January 6th.
So what else about January 6th? Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Ted, we take a time out. I apologize. I just drank this and it.
Okay.
Okay. So to your point, Ted, yeah. I mean, yeah. Martha Ann Alito, it may have just been like a weird debate and just saying, oh, we're so screwed. Our country's in trouble. So yeah, you could make a case that the upside down flag was a response to just how screwed up everything was in the country at that time. And we're in distress. So, okay, let's say that's true. Now let's go on to the next flag at the beach house.
Yes, that's the one I want to know about.
It's a Revolutionary era flag, as Ted described it. It's a green pine tree, just an outline of green, and then the type varies. In fact, I've seen some, Ted, that looks like it's Comic Sans lettering.
So oh God, no, the worst.
Yes. So it says an appeal to heaven, and if I'm not mistaken, that was the Maine militia that used that flag. I could be wrong, which because I don't have the history sitting in front of me. But yes, many of
the flag was a traditional symbol of New England. It is the official maritime ensign for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Oh, it's Massachusetts. Okay. But it was usurped. That the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, the January 6th Looney Tunes have tried to usurp, which really pisses me off, the Betsy Ross flag, which is not really Betsy Ross, but that's another story, which is a gorgeous flag and should just be our flag, quite frankly. So those flags, they're doing some other, they obviously do some, usurp some other stuff, but for the most part, and they use the Confederate flag, of course, because why the hell not? With Alito,
by the way, the flag was also flown outside the office of Speaker Mike Johnson's office.
When?
Let's see. It's still there. It hangs right outside of his office in the Cannon House office building in DC.
Well, that makes sense. He's a MAGA nut and he's a religious nut. So
Johnson says he did not know it was associated with the Stop the Steal campaign.
Of course he did. What a if you didn't know, then you're a fucking idiot. Okay. You pay attention to these things. Look at they didn't hide the flags. They weren't like, Psst, hey, Stan, yeah, show the flag. Okay. There. Okay. Now put it away.
Right. It was also the original Maine flag when Maine was brought into the Union.
Okay. So I knew there was a Maine connection there somewhere. My point is that flags matter. I mean, they really do. If I had, you probably wouldn't know it if I flew that flag, Ted, but if I flew the Confederate flag or the swastika or the hammer and sickle flag, you might think,
you have flown, you have a lot of flagpoles. and you've flown a lot of flags, and you have a lot of flags.
I do have a lot of flags.
And some of those flags are for regimes that are unsavory.
Yes, I've put up, Iran has been up there. I have Sri Lanka
Saudi
right
Arabia,
now.
maybe.
I put up Saudi Arabia.
I gave you a Taliban flag.
Yeah, Janine won't. Janine feels uncomfortable putting that one up.
Interesting that she will go with the Saudis, but not the Taliban.
Well, tomato, tomato, I guess. But yeah,
But
I'll put it up.
The Taliban, so
I'll put it up sometime. It will. The neighbors. I mean,
it looks exactly the same. It's just a different color. That's all.
Well, then it doesn't look the same, does it? The Saudi flag is the.
As soon as I said that, I knew I had said something stupid. Come back. Words.
Something back to my mouth. So, Ted, okay. So, I mean, does
as
this
the
mean
vexologist, you will Alito should recuse based
yes, absolutely.
I'm sorry. On flaggery.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Until he gives a better explanation than, oh.
Well, that's what he's used to doing as Supreme Court justice. Nobody could even fire him. Anyway, all right, let's leave that there. And
wait, they did pass the rules, the ethics rules, which have no investigative powers, which have no body that can enforce them. And that really doesn't say that they have to follow them. So, I mean, those are my kind of ethics rules, man. Wouldn't that be great?
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I know. It's great. All right. I know it's when you would think about like kind of the rules that you and I have been, in most cases, falsely accused of violating in journalism. I mean, just think, and our jobs are really not that important. We're not Supreme Court justices.
And like I said, I mean, for 40 years, I can now, for the first time in my life as an adult, have a bumper sticker on my car advocating a candidate or a cause. First time ever.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right. Or donate to a campaign.
Right.
Or fly a flag of your choosing.
I could do that.
Even a Taliban flag. Maybe not.
If my wife allows it.
The wife is the ultimate authority. All right, we'll stop that right there and we'll come right back. Thank you for listening to the DMZ America podcast. I'm Ted Rall, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the left.
And I'm Scott Stantis, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the right.
All right, we're eager to get out of here for Memorial Day weekend, so let's get this done. Okay, so Google AI, we know sucks. But it's moving forward anyway.
Yes.
Among the mistakes and untruths, it recommended that to make pizza, you should use glue as a key part of the ingredient to hold it together.
Is that wrong?
It's not recommended, although it might taste great. I can't say it's wrong. It also said that you might want to get more nutrition in your diet. Maybe you should eat rocks. It didn't specify what kind of rocks or how big the rocks should be. Boulders, pebbles, I don't know. Anyway, the point is that AI is kind of dumb.
Yes.
You and I both know from previous discussions over ChatGPT. ChatGPT suggested, among other things, that you and I were involved in a long-standing journalistic feud against each other,
which came as news to both of us,
and that we apparently had both won Pulitzer Prizes, for which I would like to thank the ChatGPT committee, although sadly it's not. I guess ChatGPT had better taste than the Pulitzer Prize committee because we have not actually won Pulitzer, except for ChatGPT. But if ChatGPT is in Google, then it's kind of true, right? By definition. Anyway, the point is AI sucks. AI is not ready for prime time. And just in keeping with that, the Washington Post announced to its newsroom that they're trying to figure out a way to patch the hole of the $77 million it lost last year. Now, I think I know how to patch that hole, Scott, because I'm a fucking financial wizard.
Let's hear it.
If a man who is worth over $200 billion were to buy the Washington Post, let's say, and then just say, here's $77 million. Problem solved. And guess what? That happened already. The first part happened. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. He has
Right.
over $200 billion. He can write a check for $77 million, which for him is about the same as the parking ticket I got the other day. And so problem solved. But anyway, okay, nobody listens to Ted. So
well, and nobody believes Scott when I say when these billionaires buy newspapers, and they hearken back to that great line from Citizen Kane when Citizen Kane and his financial guy is telling him that he's losing $1 million a year, and he goes, "I lost $1 million this year. I'll lose $1 million next year. And at this rate, I'll have to close down the newspaper in 60 years." Like billionaires actually like losing money. They don't like losing money. That's why they're billionaires. That's why they're greedy, selfish bastards. So this won't last long. My suspicion is that there's a bigger issue here, but my guess is long-term, Dr. Pat, who owns the LA Times and is now trying to figure out how to make money there, can't, because when you put your daughter in charge of things and just say, "Go have fun, honey," it's not a great business model. Go to the Washington Post, $77 million this year. They lost over $100 million last year. Bezos doesn't want to do that. So you're going to see the Washington Post is going to be put up for sale very shortly as well. But in the meantime, Ted, what's their stopgap solution?
AI.
Of
this
course.
one coming. So the chief technology officer of the paper announced to its staffers that going forward, the Washington Post is to have, quote, AI everywhere in our newsroom, maybe even in the men's room. I don't know.
Bum, bum.
it's like the good news is that if it's molesting you, it's incompetent, so it doesn't know what it's doing. So basically,
oh God, if you're at the urinal behind you, you hear this AI voice, "Don't fight it." Wait, what? God.
You sit down on the toilet. I love you. I mean, AI in the newsroom is about the dumbest idea that I've heard all fucking day, and I read the news all day. It is really, really stupid. I mean, look, the whole point of a news organization, especially a prestigious one as like the Washington Post, which I guess until now was prestigious but won't be after heretofore, is that it's supposed to provide a reliable source of information in an uncertain and difficult world. Well, this kills that, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, you wrote a column. God, how long ago has it been, Ted? You went to ChatGPT and you touched on it. You asked, describe the relationship between Scott Stantis and Ted Rall. And it went off on this multi-paragraph tangent on how we hated each other. I accused you of plagiarizing. You and I were both, we didn't say we won. It said that we were finalists twice against each other for the Pulitzer, and we did not win. And that we've tried, there has been some thaw, but not much between you and me, all of which came as a surprise to, Ted Rall and Scott Stantis. But you wrote a column that ran in the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal about this and how it's not ready for prime time. You also wrote a column that ran this week. If you want to touch on it, kind of bullet point for us, please.
Well, I mean, so very recently, my landlord informed me that he hadn't received one of my rent checks. So I went to my online banking site, pulled up the canceled check. The check had been cashed and endorsed, but not by the management company, by some random dude who, of course, by the way, in case people are asking, does not work for the management company. So basically, this happens all the time, and it's because they use the deposit feature where you take a picture of your check using the bank app and you deposit it. The thing is, it is possible actually to program the recognition. For example, the post office does this with your letters. No human being reads most letters, even if you write the address handwritten. The scanner recognizes the address and it's computerized. The sorting is done electronically. It has been for quite some time. And so similarly, banks can program their apps so that they make sure that the name on the front of the check, on the payee name, is the same as the endorsed name. They can make sure that the handwriting is consistent, that sort of thing. But they don't, because it costs more money. And so therefore, you have these outlandish examples. Mine was one of them, where it's like they're not even trying. I mean, they didn't even try to like say like, my name is Mr. Management Corp or something like that. Or they didn't open up a fake Management Corp bank account and deposit it to it. It's literally like I write a check to Apple Computer and then Scott Stantis signs it and deposits it to his account. And then Scott Stantis moves the money to his friend Ted Rall, and then Ted Rall moves the money to Clovis, and then Clovis moves to Russia and never to be seen again. And the money.
Let me ask you, Janine actually read the story this morning, your column this morning rather, and had a question. She says, who was it? Did they sign their actual name?
Well, they signed a name. I don't know who it is.
What account did it go to? Surely they can go
it
follow
absolutely
that.
Went to it's very mysterious. Look, it went to a bank account, obviously. So I don't know how they were able to open a bank account without presenting ID and stuff, right? I mean, opening a bank account's not really that easy. You have to present a lot of ID.
Is it not anymore? I'm wondering if you do it online, if you can just...
You can, but you still have to present ID. It's, ever since the USA Patriot Act, where they were very concerned about terrorist financing, they've made it even more difficult to open a bank account. So I don't get it. I don't get how any system, no matter how primitive, would allow you to endorse. I mean, just think about, I've had situations where someone wrote a check to Ted with 2 D's, Rall, and I tried to cash the check and they're like, that's not you.
When was that?
What?
When did that happen?
Oh, I don't know, 5 years ago.
Okay. And I'm just trying to give some context here, because I'm going to throw in some context, if I may, real quick. I worked at a bank.
Yeah. So, I mean, the point is that I think generally speaking, and I just heard a story from someone that someone affiliated with a one of the syndicates, told me that their company had trouble signing checks to, like, let's say it went to XYZ Features as opposed to XYZ Syndicate, and it's the same company, but the bank wouldn't deposit the check, even though it was completely legitimate.
Oh, wow.
That's as it should be. I mean, they should be careful. They can clear certain things, but I mean, when there's no effort whatsoever to, so I've been doing a deep dive. If you follow some of the links on my columns that I filed today, you've got like, some of these stories are ridiculous. I mean, some of the writing sometimes looks like it was done by someone, like by a chimpanzee. I mean, it's like, what? Not a smart chimpanzee.
No, I was going to say, I worked at a bank, but when I was freelancing, when I was trying to break into editorial cartooning and cartooning in general. And I knew that there was 2 people who worked at the bank, and they would rotate them out because it has to be like mind numbing. And they would go through checks that were, I can't remember, I think the dollar amount was $100 or $150. Mm-hmm. And those checks would automatically be directed towards this person, and they'd have to look through these things. They'd be
make sure that they
microfished.
looked okay.
Make sure that the signature was okay, that the check was made out to the right person, and that everything was copacetic.
Those people are gone.
Oh, yeah. No, this is AI, and we come back to what you said in your column and what I quoted without attribution, and I will now attribute it to you now. It's not ready for prime time. AI is not ready to do these things. It's like, as I wrote to you this morning, I texted you this morning, I said, it's sort of like self-driving cars. I think that the idea of that is awesome. I'm 65 years old. I know I've got 10, maybe 15 years left of driving. So self-driving cars is awesome.
Yeah, it would also,
but they're not ready now.
It would really solve a lot of traffic problems too.
They're not ready now. It is not ready now. Period. And so, and AI is not ready to take
electric cars are not ready yet either.
Electric cars. You know what's weird about electric cars, Ted? Here, side note, and this is human psychology, and I love this story. Is the reason most people don't want EVs is because they look at how their range.
Yes.
That can only go 300, or it can only go 350 miles on a single charge. Americans don't average, I believe it was 45 miles a day. That is literally 10% of the charge.
Most people never need it, or rarely need it, but they like to
we
have
live in
the
a
option.
country. We live in a country that doesn't have doesn't have bullet trains, doesn't have good mass transportation linking cities. So if I want to go to New Orleans, the best way for me to get there is to drive from here, from Birmingham, Alabama.
Sure.
It's a 5.5 hour drive. I could barely make it to New Orleans on a charge. The other thing is charging them. It's not like gas. Oh shit, I'm running on vapors, pull into my Circle K,
5 minutes.
glug. Yeah. 3 minutes later, you're done. And that includes the bathroom
If you were in a
break.
mad hurry, you could put in $5 and be on your way.
Exactly. But you can't do that with an electric vehicle. It takes too long to charge. So that's why people hate them. But so we're not ready for those. So I have a hybrid. You have a hybrid or had a hybrid. I love having a
my
hybrid.
next car will be a hybrid for sure. No,
that's the next bridge. It's the same thing when they're making all this noise about natural gas. And yes, it does emit greenhouse gases, but not nearly as much as coal. It's a good bridge. We have a lot of it here in the United States, and it's a good bridge fuel. It cuts back significantly the amount of greenhouse gases, but people are going fucking nuts. They're saying, no, we can't have, a friend of mine worked for the gas company in Arizona, and she had a natural gas car, which was awesome. You pull into your driveway, you pull into your garage, you put in the thing, it fills it up. It's a good bridge. Hybrids are a good bridge going towards electric cars until we get them to be better.
Scott, this Washington Post AI story, really
yes.
doesn't it remind you of the Tronc video? Remember the Tronc video? Like,
oh, of course I do. I worked for them.
Machine learning will go into
funnel.
The giant Tronc funnel.
The funnel. Oh my God, the video that they did on what's that show called? Last Week Tonight or
John Oliver.
Yeah, John Oliver. And they did this. If you haven't seen it, it's still available on YouTube. It is so flippin' funny because the actual video of these two morons who were clearly somehow a con man and a con woman who somehow convinced the owners of the Tribune Publishing to rename it Tronc, CRONC.
Online content.
Doesn't Tronc it sounds like you're going to go, lay a deuce. It was like you're at like a dude retreat. I said, hey Ted, I'm going to go do a Tronc. I'll be right back. Totally. It was, and the video itself talked about, and just in the actual video for Tronc, and they'd have machine learning, and it all would go into a funnel and meaningless graphics of things moving around like atoms around the center of this small T. It's like, it was, and they just, anyway, they brutal. It was brutal. It was just fucking brutal. And now I pine for those days, but I make fun of those people. They're the same ones who hired me. So God bless them.
True. Good for
but
them.
not these two, not the two assholes on the video. They had nothing to do with it. They were just, like I said, they were con men.
Yeah.
How many of you out there listening have had con men and con women come in who were IT experts, machine learning experts, and they didn't know fucking squat, and they got paid 6-7 figures to do their bullshittery and leave.
Yeah.
Not making life better for anybody. No. Sorry, I have hard feelings about all of that.
Oh no, yeah, you and me both. I mean, I could.
But getting to the AI at the Washington Post, you can tell there are stories written by AI, and they're badly written. This is on top of
they're pablum and they're bland, and I mean, I'm a big fan.
And they get things really wrong.
And I'm on Quora, and they all have a certain structure, right? Like, so you let's say on Quora, the question is like, why do cats meow to humans? And so the structure is always like, is it a generic discussion of what you're talking about? Cats are adorable quadrupeds that have entered our hearts for thousands of years, in part because they're cute and also because they control vermin. And then it's like, okay, shut up. And then it's like, we know that. Okay, I know what a cat is. And then they'll be like, some people think that cats meow because of that. Other people think that cats meow because of this other reason. It's like, and then it's like always like, in conclusion, comma, like nobody really knows why cats meow.
What is Quora? I'm sorry, you mentioned that.
Quora is a website and an app where people ask questions, and self-appointed experts or actual experts answer them.
Well, that's another thing that Google had announced. I sent forward you that story that they are going to have when you ask a question on Google, Google will answer it.
Yeah, they'll tell you to
Google
put glue in your
AI is going to
pizza.
scrub the internet,
Yeah,
and
they're
you're
going to
going,
put glue in your pizza and tell you to
yeah,
eat rocks.
yeah, and eat rocks. Yum.
All right.
No, it's true. I
There's
think
no
it's, I
better
mean,
place to end.
and they're already doing it. If you go to Google now and type in something like, what is, what does Ted Rall do for a living? It'll give you just that answer. Ted Rall is an American editorial cartoonist who also writes a column,
Great. Perfect.
and no other links, no other attribution. They're going to have to do that because people are paying them ad dollars to have those links, but maybe they're just going to be sponsored links from now on. I'm not sure what the structure is going forward,
Don't
but
know.
that to me is terrifying because it also means, the head of Google really likes, Jill Stein. I'm just throwing in the name, the Green Party. So if you say, what is the most who should I vote for in November? Jill Stein will be the only answer, or potentially the potential for abuse, for stupid answers, for uneducated answers. And when do we begin to, when does academia say, okay, that is a legitimate answer, you can use that in research papers? Right now, AI, we all use it. It really is much more ensconced in our life than we think it is. Take a step back and find out, because it's crazy how much of it is. I actually had a discussion. I was having problems with an Apple product, and they hooked me up with a chat bot, and it was excellent, Ted. Good conversation. The bot understood what I was saying, gave me good information on how to correct the problem.
I've never
It was a positive. Well, maybe I'm just I'm the lowest denominator that they can talk to.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you had a better bot than I did. But I've got to run to the bank and try to fucking talk, get my
Okay.
account closed, which they won't fucking close because they're stupid.
Because AI doesn't
They
understand
can't
what you want to
Yeah,
do.
you'll love this. There are pending transactions, but they can't close the pending transactions because the account is blocked. But the account can't be opened, it can't be unblocked because of the Clovis could do that, no question. I'm putting my
I'm
money
not laughing
inside
at you.
Clovis's kitty litter box from now on. All
I'm
right.
not laughing with you. I'm laughing at you because
I
I've been
certainly
to,
hope-
we've
I
all been to those places. So where can we
certainly
go
hope
to read your column and your other fine work, Ted Rall?
So you can go to read my column and all my stuff at rall.com. You can also listen to the Final Countdown radio show with Angie Wong and myself on X Spaces and Sputnik, and also Rumble. And you also, I really want to highlight my new old book is out. It is 2024 Revisited.
Oh, yay.
It is full beautiful color. It used to be black and white,
Ooh.
and it is basically this graphic novel that I drew in 2000 and predicted 2024. And so now it's like you can see all the shit I got wrong. Well, actually, mostly I got it right.
Well, I gotta get a copy of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. So there you
Cool.
go. How about you, Scott? Where can we find your stuff?
By the way, on the Final Countdown, they have a regular guest, some asshole from the American South,
The
cartoonist guy. I don't know. He's just, I guess I guess they just have to fill up space. Anyway. Anyway, so yeah, but the Final Countdown, by the way, is an excellent radio show. Seriously, if you listen to any radio, listen to that. Go to gocomics.com/Scott Stantis, one word, to see my editorial cartoons. Go to gocomics.com/Prickly City. You can see my political comic strip. You can go to Dallas News and see the work I do for the Dallas Morning News. And I guess, I'm not sure, they're still building the gallery, Ted. This shouldn't take this long, but God love them, the Chicago Tribune continues to try to build it. And I actually
use machine learning.
I should just AI it. There you go. There you go. And then next week,
I gotta go. My bank's calling.
Okay, I'll talk to you later, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Ted.
Hello?
Regarding a recent request.